brothers and sisters told me that you all were going to be here, and I thank you for that. These are desperate days and desperate times, and so for you to be here at this risk means everything. I see many of you have brought your families, and it means everything that you're here. Because really all we have are our stories right now. What's happening in faith these last few years since Christ has left us. And so for you to be considering what it means to follow Christ, well, you're in jeopardy. And you know that. So we're meeting here in this place for a reason. You know, for me, I guess you could say that I've been on the heels of healing my entire life. On the heels of healing. You know, I'm not sure if that's really a Hebrew saying or a human saying, but it seems like I've heard upright people say that my entire life. And by upright, I don't mean good people or righteous people. I just mean upright people walking around, people like this, like me. You see, I've only been upright for now these past 5 years or so. It's been 5 years since I was healed. 5 years now since I've been upright. And by upright, I guess in my case, well, hopefully my case, I mean good people or righteous. At least trying to be, anyway. See, for most of my life, I was an invalid. You know, I kind of remember being a kid and being able to run around and play. And then at some point, my legs started to get weak. And then gradually, they just stopped functioning altogether. And of course, what followed was just hopelessness, that I would never walk again. My parents kind of hung in there with me for several years, maybe 5, 6 years. They put up with me. But then one time, they decided to take a trip to Jerusalem. My dad put me in the back of this cart that he had made that he would pull me on because I was still growing and getting heavier, and he didn't want to carry me everywhere. But we made this short trip to Jerusalem, and he was pulling me along the cart, and we got outside of the temple and outside of the wall, and you can imagine just the grand scope of those temple walls. And for someone like me being a kid, as we pulled up outside of that wall, that how awesome and wonderful that looked. And when we got there, my dad stopped the cart, and he turned around, and he just looked at me with this pathetic look on his face. And he came over and he picked me up. You know, more than anything, I remember just these dead eyes, these lifeless eyes. And he walked over and he put me next to the wall, next to the sheep gate entrance. And he walked away. I never saw him again. See, my condition left me nothing. And by nothing, I don't mean possessions. I mean nothing. I was nothing. I was nothing to my family. I was nothing to my community. And pretty soon became nothing to myself. I couldn't work. I couldn't help. I couldn't have a wife or children. And what was the point of an inheritance for somebody like me? So I think my younger brothers probably just got it all. I don't know. They left because they were so embarrassed of me. They just left me there right outside of the wall, next to the sheep gate entrance. Now, right outside the sheep gate entrance next to the wall was where all the ritual cleansings took place. And see, inside was the best place in the world that our people ever thought was, right inside was the court of Gentiles, the biggest area inside the temple walls. It's where everybody could go. If you were Gentile or Jew, whatever you were, you could gather in there, seeking God in whatever way you were seeking God. And inside the court of Gentiles was the court of women, inside of that. And the court of women was the closest place that Jewish women could actually go to the temple. The closest place they could be to the Holy of Holies, which of course was the temple that was inside. And that's what we believe God was, this incredible place, and it was right here, right outside of this temple, that they just left me. I don't know, maybe they thought that somebody would care or somebody would take care of me, but somebody never did. Well, at least not for a long time anyway. Right outside of this wall, people would be cleansed before they would go inside, or you would cleanse your animals before they would be taken in to be sacrificed. And this was the holiest place in the world. This is where God was. And it was right outside of this temple, right here, where I was just out of reach of God. It was like I was on the heels of healing, just out of reach. And you come outside and there's just a short little hill that goes down to the Pool of Bethesda. The Pool of Bethesda was this beautiful court, this beautiful structure where there was a pool for healing. And this was my new location. This was my new address for 38 years. If you were going to write a letter to me, it was to the northeast gate of the temple wall. That's where I found myself year after year after year, either up by the gates begging for food or money from all the holy people going inside, or I would make my way and crawl down to the pool to look for healing in the water. You see, it was thought that if you stirred the water, if you got in right after the water was stirred, that you would be healed. And guess what? An angel did the stirring. Now, I don't know if I believe necessarily that angel did the stirring. Don't get me wrong, I believe in angels. But for years, I counted on that angel to save the day for me, and I got nothing. See, it was thought that illness was a punishment for your sin. So I had to get in that water. I had to get in there to somehow cleanse myself of my sin, to somehow get in and make amends for whatever sin was in my life. I don't know what that was. As a 6-year-old boy, how am I to understand what I did wrong? As a 13-year-old left at the wall, as a man growing up all these years, how was I to know? But I had to get in that water. And it became my God, really, and my obstacle. As much as I longed for and had to be in that water, it was also an obstacle for me, and I hated it because it didn't always work. It didn't always work when you got in the water. And what if, when it was my turn to get in the water, nothing happened? What would happen if when I got in, nothing happened? Where would my hope be? Where would a future be? What if when I got in, I just sank to the bottom and nobody knew and nobody came? You know, most days I think I just laid down at the poolside and cried myself to sleep. Just uncontrollable crying. I think in my worst moments, I actually thought it was my tears that somehow kept the dream of this miracle pool alive. You know, my sin was so bad that maybe everybody else could be healed. You know, I set the bar so low, and believe me, I was low to the ground, that everybody else could get in over me, and they did. You know, what did I do to deserve this? And I asked that question for so long. What did I do to God? But it didn't take long for me to stop asking that question, because I gave up hope. One day, I remember seeing some men that were new, that were walking around the other side of the pool, walking through the colonnades, through the columns, and somehow, I don't know how to explain it. I knew they were coming for me. Walking along, all the people that surrounded the pool, and they came up to me, and there was one man in particular that was different than the others. He just somehow kind of stood out more than the rest. I don't know if it was how he walked or where the others positioned themselves around him, his face. But he walked up to me and he said, "Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well?" Now you have to understand, the romanticism of the pool wasn't all that it's cracked up to be. I mean, the name Bethesda means house of mercy. And don't get me wrong, it was a house of mercy. It was a wonderful place. And the water was of value. It was special somehow. And you got in the water, and somehow it came up to you, and the warmth of it all, it changed you. And I watch people get in all the time and